Hello, everyone. I wanted to invite you to join the Creative Social Impact Collective. It is a community of creative-minded change makers like you that are working together to deepen their impact in the work they're doing. And as a thank you, you get a free download of the 5 steps to reimagining or imagining a new program, project, venture, or movement to bring the change that we want to see into the world today. Hope to see you there.
Welcome again to Art, Artists, and Action. I'm your host, LC Walter, and I am joined today by the fabulous producer extraordinaire, Miss Kimberlee Nicole. Greet the people.
Hello, everybody. It's me.
And our esteemed guest of the evening, Mr. James Dukes. It's wonderful to have you here, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Also known as IMAKEMADBEATS.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and just jump into it and chop it up a little bit. So give us a little bit about your background. Tell the folks who are listening to this where you're from and what you do.
Yeah. I'm a music producer, engineer, and founder of Unapologetic, a creative company. I was raised in Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I currently live. Got my professional start in Manhattan as a producer and engineer at Quad Studios. It was there that I began work with some of my first clients were Solange Knowles, Missy Elliot, Music Soul Child, a lot of artists at the time. Eventually I moved back to Memphis and started my company here that essentially aims to liberate artists in a way that allows them to be the artists they want to be, boldly and unapologetically, right? And economically, right? So we ain't about no, feel-good art. We out here trying to get this money because what we do is valuable.
I love that. I love that statement.
Yeah.
It was just funny. I love how you said that because growing up in New Orleans, one of the biggest things we knew was dudes like Master P, who was like, look, I'm about to do this on my own because I can't trust a record label. Then we saw Cash Money when it was nobody knew about Cash Money until they got with Universal and stuff like that. So I appreciate the fact that you said that. Which makes me beg the question, you were in Manhattan. What brought you back to Memphis? You said it's about the economic piece, but why definitely from Manhattan back to Memphis?
Before I hop into that, I just want to give a shout out to Master P. He's one of my one of my biggest influences for sure.
Percy.
Yeah, all day. That movement was amazing. So why back to Memphis? So the direct answer is just that my dad called me and told me he had some heart issues. And my dad raised me as a single dad. He raised my brother and I as a single parent, worked 60, 70 hours a week to take care of us. I had spent so much time chasing my dreams that I had definitely been away from my family for a while. And nothing is worth, as much to me as my dad. So I just wanted to move and go make sure he was good. It was kind of depressing because I thought I was leaving the industry. I mean, all of my opportunities, not all of them, but so many of them came from the fact that I was in the belly of the beast. And I was just coming across so many amazing artists, engineers, and just, people in the industry all the time. You just walk outside and you bump into Russell Simmons or whoever. And so I knew that being in Memphis, that would hinder a lot of those happenings. So I was kind of down about it because I had, you work so hard to build a necessary network and stream of income in a space like New York, where it's so hard to get out of the trap of you just work for $8 or $10 an hour, and you just feel like you're around the corner from your dreams, but you're never there. But I had kind of pushed that a little bit, and I was if I wasn't there, I was getting there. I was almost there. So it was kind of a sad moment, to be honest, to come back here. Until I realized my idea of the city I grew up in was definitely the idea from an 18-year-old. Right?
Grown
so
man, adult
back
lies
here,
next.
right. When I got back here and I was a grown man, I looked at it differently. I looked at what was happening here on the ground, the creatives, some of the issues that needed to be solved, and seemingly no one prioritized solving them. And more importantly, I saw my community, the one I grew up in, not doing any better than when I left it. But surrounding communities were. They had been invested in, they had been made priority and focused to develop. But the neighborhood I grew up in, which is Orange Mound, that's the first neighborhood built for and by Black people in the United States of America.
Whoa. History lesson, folks.
Yeah. And it wasn't doing so well. And so, you know, I came from that neighborhood. I'm doing all right. What have I learned that can help this?
I got you.
Right. So what can I learn that can help this neighborhood? And then what have I learned that can help Memphis artists as a whole? And I didn't want it to feel charitable.
I got you.
I wanted it to feel like dudes from the streets getting money, because that's what it is. It's as simple as that.
It's the easiest paper chase right there. Bring it back home. And you know, the beautiful thing about what you said, I think this is, and we hear this in songs all the time. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And I think that mindset, that mentality, if you can make it in the big city, the Big Apple, the bright lights, and you can bring that energy back home.
Yeah.
The
exactly.
optics initially is like, oh, culture shock. Like, dang, I just left this, and you came back into it. So, no, mad props to bringing that back and bringing back that mindset and mentality.
And shout out to my hometown, because as I'm listening to James speak about what he got from New York and he brought back home, is definitely the grind, the gutter that we grow up in. And so even for me, that I'm not in the place that I grew up in, but it's in me. I can imagine when you came back, people were looking at you weird coming back with that kind of thing, but they were interested in it. Would you say?
So many people, absolutely. So many people were almost like, why did you leave that? You know, or so many people were, you know, and it's funny because I almost consider like Memphis and New York polar opposites, like polar opposites. I mean, I just can't imagine a place more polar opposite than Memphis and New York. Like, just in a sense of like, you know, here everybody's asking you how you doing, you know, and in New York everybody's like, get out the way. You know what I'm saying? Like,
we got stuff to do.
Yeah, and even here, like the energy, and this is just me being truthful, the energy is often like, if you're ambitious and have lofty goals and drive, man, the culture here can make you feel like you're doing too much. You know what I'm saying? Whereas in New York, I mean, I could not sleep for 5 days and somebody would be like, I slept in 6 days, shut up. Like, it's that level of grind, like, you know, and it's just so opposite. So there was such a readjustment in coming back here, for sure.
Can I ask a question? And I love, you know, and even following you on social for the last couple of years and watching you do what you do reminds me of home, even though you're not where I grew up. I love that. So my curiosity is asking me to ask you, like, what is your big, hairy, audacious dream for the impact you want to make back where you grew up, now that you left and came back and in this different place?
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, Wakanda. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the simplest way to put it. Shout out to a movie that just makes answering that so much easier than it would have been.
Right over left. Come on now, right over left.
Absolutely. I mean, it's I'm from a very Black place. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's something that I grew up in. I grew up surrounded by Black people all the time. You know, and Black people are brilliant. You know, and when I think about the things that hold us back, or the things that maybe don't hold us back, but the obstacles that don't allow us to accelerate the same way other cultures or other people get to accelerate. You know, that's my dream. My dream is, when I went to New York, my dream was to lift myself out of poverty doing what I wanted to do. When I came back from New York, I placed a value in what could I do for others. You know, that was a game shift for me. And that's why I built Unapologetic. I make mad beats. Me as a producer, engineer, I was doing just fine. I could have worked myself and worked remotely, and traveled and done all that stuff or whatever. But you know, my goal is that artists know their value and get their value, and that there's an economy built for artists. Number two, my goal is to be an example that you don't have to be a nonprofit organization to run a company that is based in social values and character that can help build community, right? Like, you don't have to leave that to either nonprofit organizations or celebrities. You can run a business that has standards on who you work with, who you don't work with, and what you're involved in, to build a community, right? To help build a community, to do your part.
I think that's the dope part of what you just said right there, because a lot of times people want to look outside the community and they think the people who are outside have the answers, when the answers are right at home. Right.
Yeah, the answers are just floating right at home, and we're working on something that I think is pretty big now. It's by far the biggest thing I've ever worked on in my life. And you know, when we get to the other side of the finish line of that, like, that's what I want people to see. I want people to see, oh, that's James. Yeah, he was off of Barron. You know, like, you know, he used to walk to the bus over there. So, you know, and I'm not, you know, I don't have any platinum plaques. And even more, and super important, I'm not visiting Memphis. I live here. Right. I don't have an apartment or a condo out in LA, and I just come back here to say what's up to my people where I'm from, and then I go back to wherever.
Like, you're rooted.
No, I'm still here.
Right.
Yeah, I think still here. I'm here every day.
The biggest thing that I'm hearing you saying is, because it's something that I wrestle with as an educator. Sometimes we talk about this giving kids an opportunity. And it's like, yo, I think opportunity is available for anybody. Opportunity is flat out going to be available. You got an opportunity to do it in Memphis. You got an opportunity to do it in New York. The difference between opportunities in New York versus opportunities in Memphis is this: you are now the access point. And a lot of times people think it's just the opportunity. Everybody has one, but you have physically brought yourself back to a space where now they actually have access to you. And like you just said, to your point, you're not like, you know, I'm a resident during the holidays, but when it comes down to this season, that season, I'm always on my grind so much. So you actually came home to give people access to what you actually have to offer. It's not just the opportunity you're giving these people, you're actually giving them the access to actually plant their feet in the ground to create the space that you want to have for themselves. That's beautiful, bro.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think, you know, it's funny, New York is a beast in every way. You know, and it's interesting because a lot of people associate my grind to the fact that I lived in New York for 7 years, right? And New York, without a doubt, poured some hot sauce on me. You know what I'm saying? Like, absolutely. Even though all they got is Tabasco, they ain't got no Louisiana. But you know.
Bruh.
But they 100%, you know, got me lit. You know what I'm saying? But I will say this though, I went up there because I was already a wolf, right? Like that's why I went up there. I didn't go up there and was scared out of my mind, like what's going on, and I just happened to become, you know, a grind. That didn't just happen. I went up there to run fast. That was my point, because I was already running fast. And so, you know, it's important that people understand, you know, our communities create these kinds of people. New York did not create me. Like, you know, I got some salad dressing in New York, but the salad was made here.
Yes, sir. Speak to that. Yes.
Absolutely. And it's just important that people know that, you know, transformation in your community starts with you. It really does. And like you said, yeah, I learned so much in New York just about the music game. That like when I came back down here, man, I'm never gonna forget. I was back down here, man, and like I got pulled into this meeting about like how to help build the Memphis music scene here, because you know Memphis and music are synonymous. You know, like this is our #1 export, and it's our #1 reason we're mentioned internationally. Music, you know, and I was just in these discussions, and like so much of their approach to the music industry had expired. It was like they just hadn't noticed it yet, you know. And it just let me know that like, man, you guys need some really forward-thinking people here to help push this into the now and then into the future. You know, and it was just good to pass all of that down, because that is something I got from New York. Yeah.
You know, as you say that, I tell people I went to get a degree in entrepreneurship because when I went somewhere and said I wanted to create my own, because I saw something was missing and I knew there was a solution, but I didn't know how to put it out in the world outside of my head. And the first thing I learned about being an entrepreneur is that it's not necessarily about starting a business. It's a way of being. It's a thing that's in you, and it's about being a creative problem solver and a change agent. And so as we're talking about your experience, that's the biggest thing that's ringing to me listening to your story, is like you left home, you had an experience, you came back, you noticed something was missing, something was needed, and you didn't just go and talk to people. You created a thing to fill the gap and the opportunity. And as an artist, I found out that I was a creative and artist after I sat in cubicles and things and was feeling weird and didn't fit in. You did a different thing, but I'm curious to know, like, how does your creative mind fuel your entrepreneurial spirit and mindset? How does that work?
I literally just had a conversation about this earlier today with my guy Kid Maestro. I was telling him how much, like, you know, when I'm in these conversations with these organizations, like sometimes I'll forget that I'm creative until I meet with a whole bunch of other entrepreneurs, and then I'm like, oh no, you're a creative guy, because it's like, you know, there's just so much following of a script or a rule book in business, right? In traditional based business. And then when you come across somebody like me, I mean, what book? Like I've just never, you know, I've literally, but one thing that I thought about, I was telling my guys earlier today that I realized about myself, which is just that, like, every job I've ever had in my life was a problem solving job. Like I've never had a job where, hey, James, we need you to do this, this, and this over and over again. No, like every job I've had was like my very first job, I was the electronics specialist at Target, right? So, hey, you know, why, you know, and that's the thing about it. If you work anywhere near electronics, people will bring you their electronics and be like, what's wrong with this? Or why doesn't this work? Or do I need to get a USB cable with this? Or what kind of this or that? You know what I'm saying? And so I was 16 years old.
You was pre-Geek Squad.
Yeah, I was Geek Squad before Geek Squad. So it was, you know, it was, I realized like I was like training the muscle of problem solving. And I had already had a particular love for problem solving. I was in this program called Clue as a kid. It's called Creative Learning in a Unique Environment. And it's literally, they give you, in second grade, some teacher said, hey, James, we want to talk to your dad about you taking a test for a program. I said, all right. All I knew was like a week later, I was in this room with one person in the room, and it was like a weird test where they were asking me these random questions. And it literally felt like I was being, you know, interrogated by the FBI. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, wow.
And then I remember I took that test. It was a whole bunch of verbal questions. Anyway, I walked away from it. Like a few days later, they said, James, you're eligible for a program for kids who think differently.
It sounds like that was the fuel. That was the fuel right there from the beginning.
Yeah. I think, well, I think the real fuel was my dad. My dad is an artist. He drew stuff, and you know, I think that was the beginning of like thinking left, or you know, just thinking outside the box. But once they put me in that program, you know, I remember every Tuesday and Thursday at a certain time for 30 or 45 minutes, we would go to this portable outside. And, you know, we would do like these like brain teasers, and like we learned how to play chess in third grade. Like, you know, it was all critical thinking and problem solving. You know, and then my mom is a math teacher. While I didn't grow up with her, I'm 100% sure I got that from her.
Shout outs to mom and the math teachers. Shout out.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, you know, I've always loved solving problems, and when you're creative, you get to weaponize your ability to think outside the box in an industry where like so few are. So it's very fun to be an entrepreneur, because you walk in the room knowing I don't have to do it like how these people are doing it. I don't have to, you know, I don't have to knock on the front door. If you go to my Twitter page right now, one of the things you'll read in my bio, it says, I've never knocked on the front door and gotten in. Never.
That's that tenacious audacity. Hey.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Like I have never like said, hey, James, you should apply for this. Applied for it and gotten it. Like never. That's never happened for me yet. You know what I'm saying? It happened once a couple years ago. It was the very first time I had applied for something and gotten it. Every other time, like, I have to like stunt on the game. Like, I have to like purposely walk into something aiming to embarrass everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the competitive spirit in me, right? Like I didn't make the team by being better than another guy. I made the team by dunking on him. Like, I had to embarrass. Like, you know, look, I've never been.
I don't know why y'all don't have my jersey sitting over there by now. Y'all saw I walked in the door. What's the problem?
Hey, the shock and awe. But you know what? I think that's a testament to the kind of fire that lived in you. It was already there. And what I have found is that people with creative minds and artists are probably the only humans I've ever come across that have a mastery of that audacity in creating something. And shout out to my creatives that don't identify as artists, but they have the audacity to challenge status quo and just go do it just because, and willing to be weird in this space, right? But that's all the stuff that changes the world. And that's why this is called art, artists, and action, because it's not just about creating the art, but you need the mind and the artist in order to move things into action. So I love that you sharing that and sharing your story and your work to empower other artists to own their stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, man. You got to. Like I just like that's where empowerment starts, is that you own it. Like I've done a lot of things that a lot of people think were amazing, but didn't necessarily push me forward, because in order for me to accomplish them, I had to lose some or all of my ownership in it. You know what I'm saying? And that's where it truly starts with being daring enough to walk in the room with 100% ownership. Right? Like,
true.
That's where it starts.
I think, and to jump into that part right there, I think as your work progresses, do you see it going into that avenue where you're creating a space or helping people create the understanding of the system in which they're in, so they can understand what ownership looks like, especially if you took it from the entrepreneurial standpoint?
Absolutely. We, in 2019, we launched the Unapologetic Youth Scholarship Program. And we brought in, it was specifically for between the ages of 14 and 17-year-old rappers. So if you're in high school and you rap, you could apply for this scholarship program that if you applied and you were selected, Unapologetic would shoot a music video for you, produce and record a song for you, do a documentary on what it is to be a teenage rapper in Memphis, and essentially get mentorship from me. And what we ended up doing was, while one person was selected, we ended up mentoring about 8 or 9 kids.
Oh, that's beautiful, man.
And so the idea is to do that, is to educate early. You know, NLE Chopper is like the guy here right now, right? He's like 16 or something, right? So you literally have 16, 17-year-olds here going independent, starting their own movements, getting offered multi-million-dollar deals from labels in Memphis right now.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not too early.
I think, the part that trips me out about what you're saying is sometimes, folks are thinking it's a pipe dream for some of these cats to actually want to be a hip hop star. And it's not to say that somebody's like down in the dream. I don't think anybody's attempting to down the dream or whatever. But those avenues for that creative juice, like, they have to be somewhere. And I think the fact that you laying the foundation for that in a wonderful area of Memphis, like, how far could a wildfire like that spread? People understood the power of being a creative, because you're not leaving these kids in a space where poverty will be a continual issue. You're not leaving them in a space where they don't understand the worth behind their work. And they believe that this is their work. Like you said, like some of these kids have that fire in them, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you cultivate that? That's dope.
I can answer that question by just thinking about my life. It's just so funny, man. Like, sometimes I wonder how I got here, because I don't think anybody thought that what I wanted to do was a great idea to do. Like, I don't think anybody thought, except for maybe my brother. He's only a year and a half older than me, and he was trying to do the same thing. I just think the first thing it does is just if you're young and you meet somebody who values what you value, I think it starts there.
Right.
I think it starts there. So I think it's one thing for me to try to convince somebody or try to convince somebody of why what I want to do is valuable, right? It's another thing for that person to already have the knowledge of it being valuable, and then already have some knowledge on how you would approach making that possible. And so when you talk to a kid, you know, I talked to kids before the pandemic. I talked to anywhere from 10 to 14 high schools a year. You know what I'm saying? I would just go in and talk to kids about the music industry and how I'd accomplished what I'd accomplished. And, you know, kids always ask the same questions, you know what I'm saying? And it's, I'll just say this, like, kids are often very surprised that a hip hop producer or a producer like me who, you know, walked into their class and I didn't, you know, I walk in there with a hoodie on, probably a whole bunch of rings and, you know what I'm saying, and whatever. You know, that I just keep it real with them, you know, and they always appreciate that. They always love that. They always, I could just see on their faces that like, they just are so refreshed that, that I know the artist that they're talking about, that I know their potential, you know, and I tell it to them real. I say, look, you know, the last 2 people to get signed out of this city were not even 20 years old yet, you know? So I'm not looking at you all as like these little cute things, like I'm doing something cute here,
Right.
coming into a classroom. Nah, man, like y'all 100% could change your life, your parents' life, everybody's life at your current age. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be clear about this. This is not I'm not in here checking off a box so I can say I've spoken to high school. I'm talking to people who can change the world right now. Like, you know.
What the fact that it's coming from you and what you represent to them versus any other person, grown up, field, industry, you know, what do you think the fact that it's coming from you as an artist, a culture bearer, as we like to say,
Yeah.
what impact or difference do you think that makes for them to hear it from someone like you?
I mean, I hope. Okay, so I'll just say this. Like, I have, you know, when I did my TED Talk, it was funny because we, like, shout out Master P, shout out any, you know, I watch Narcos and stuff and I get inspired by Pablo, you know what I'm saying? So any, like, we're going to do this, we got to figure this out kind of mindset, I'm a fan. But like one thing that we did here when we first started Unapologetic was like, I looked at the parts of Memphis where like if people were in these parts of Memphis and they had never heard of Unapologetic, I failed, right? And so one of those, or all of those spaces were all the colleges. Every college, like I'm not even gonna say kind of, we 100% had interns vandalize the properties with stickers, like unapologetic stickers everywhere on classroom doors, RA doors, laundromats. We took over all the colleges, right? On a few of them, we even created some controversy. Security got involved, people was checking out tapes, right? But the message was sent, right? So no matter what happens, everybody saw these logos and these stickers everywhere and was like, who is this? So I'm not surprised when college students know about us and what we're doing. So yeah, so there was a whole bunch of security on campus, like questioning people in terms of what happened and how it happened and everything. So we made our voice known that we existed. The controversy behind it spread the word much further than the stickers did. So I expect college students to know who and what we are. When I did my TED Talk, the guy who was executive producing the TED Talks, he was a high school teacher, and he had his students as interns to learn about production of an event. When I got there for the rehearsal, the 2 days before the TED Talk, I got there for the rehearsal and I met him. He said, "Man, it's great to meet you, bro." I was like, "Yeah, it's good to meet you too." He said, "Man, I ain't gonna lie, man. Like, you know, when my kids in class, we were going over who was going to be doing the TED Talk and we were going through the booklet, everybody was the most excited for you. All the kids were the most excited for you." And he was just like, and he told his kids that he had never heard of me. And then they all shamed him for having never heard of me. He said they were making fun of me for the rest of the day. They were calling me old because I had never heard of you.
Wow.
And I was completely shocked because we had never aimed at that demographic in terms of promotion and digital marketing or visibility. We had never aimed at. We always aimed at 18 and up, 18 and up. And so what I realized at that time was that, you know, and I met some of these kids. All of these kids have been following me on Instagram. All of these kids, they had, you know, they were up on everything. Everything we did, they knew. And then I realized, you know, just from talking to them, it all starts with the optics of it. And this is why I will never, you won't catch me in a suit. You won't catch me in a suit. Not that I have problems with suits. I just need to show that success doesn't only look like somebody in a suit.
They feel you. They see themselves in you. And I think that goes back to that too.
Yeah. They see freedom. When you open up a book for TED Talks and you see a whole bunch of headshots with people wearing ties, and then you see a guy with a mask. Who was that? That guy is doing whatever he wants to do. And that's why like, you know, a few years ago, I don't know about right now, but a few years ago, even though Kanye was at the end of his 30s, 16 to 17-year-olds were his #1 fans, right? It's because Kanye, even if it was controversy and dumb at times, he was still doing whatever he wanted to do and did not play by politics. He did not play by any societal norms, all that stuff. And so when you do that, when you radically and boldly do that, young people love you.
Created a lane. And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, when you talk about what it means to be a creative and how that does have the impact, especially how you can see that impact on youth, it's like that's the way that you can change their minds, and then their minds are going to be the ones who evolve to change these systems that we're in. Because one of the biggest things that they want to know is, how does this impact me? When am I ever going to use this? And I think when a teacher was showing them, look, hey, this is how you can be or understand what it means to put on a production. And then when they see the person who looks like them doing that particular thing, like that's a game changer. Like, and unapologetically, that's what we really need to do in order to make sure that we're making the impact, because that's the work.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's the work. Speaking of that. So
absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more.
I think people, definitely young people, that spirit of a liberated life.
Yeah.
I think when you get grown, you've bumped into all of the barriers, not all of them, but a lot of them. But kids still have that's like, I think about my littles, right? They don't really know I can't yet. They don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when kids are growing up and they see, especially by the time they get to middle school, high school, and the grown-ups are in that, I guess, that constricted space,
Yeah.
and then you show up,
Yeah.
they are like, brah. I think about just the state of the world right now, and how there are a ton of young people still in middle school, some elementary school. They start in social ventures now because they already know, we as grown-ups, we don't know what we're doing. They're like, forget it. I'm gonna start something. We're gonna sell these things. We're gonna help these people over here. Hey, can you open a bank account for me? That's what I need you to do. And then you can step to the side. Right?
Yeah. You said it best. You said liberation. How did you say that again? You said it, the way you phrased it was amazing.
Well, I don't even know what I said, but everyone aspires and seeks to have a liberated life, a liberated experience.
Yeah, that's what it is. You know, the worst thing, and I felt like this too as a kid, and I talk to kids about this all the time. Like the #1 reason kids want to be adults is to be able to do what they want to do. But at the same time, they also fear having to like be something they don't want to be just to, you know what I'm saying? And so when they meet this creative who does exactly what he was dreaming about doing when he was a kid, and he has not conformed at all, it just hits them like, oh man, this is the guy. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, I would venture to say the grown-ups that you come in contact with looking at you, because I know sometimes I have people asking me, like, how are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know, I just do it. And that's definitely how you ride too. And I think it comes from, I'm gonna say my audacity, the audacity to just go
Yeah.
and just to understand that if the solutions to the world already existed, we would be in a different place. So it takes people that are willing to do it different and not be scared of what's going to happen, but understand how to mitigate risk, because you're going to have to take some, but how can you mitigate them? And how can you take, leverage their resources, things that are a part of the environment, and see what it is. I think that's where that creative mindset, that entrepreneurial spirit, that thing happens, but it starts with that fire in you. And there's a ton of adults with fire in them. They feel it, but they just need permission to move forward in it. And people like you definitely give that example for not just the kids that you bump into, that you work with, that you talk with. They parents, their teachers, their elders are paying attention. The other demographic following you on social.
Right.
They watching it too.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that you are showing and sharing with people in that space too.
What I want to ask in that space is, how do you think you being able to help them in that space can affect their well-being, like in the future? Because, you know, we talk about how uh, their current climate, like environmental, you know, climates and things like that are shifting. You went from one place, you know, that belly of that beast in New York, and you saw how that happened.
Yeah.
And when you came back with that 18-year-old set of eyes, but then, you know, you're a grown man trying to do this thing. How do you think showing them these things from the lens you have now truly can affect their future well-being, especially when you talk about not just the fact that you are in Memphis, but the fact that you are in a southern city, showing people a different way of thinking in life?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I think of well-being first, like, I think me a few years ago would have just thought of like how to get this money so that you be happy. And then, but now I think of how to be happy so you can get this money. You know, and so, you know, I know for me, you know, if these kids are anything like me, it's just very important that first they feel seen, you know, that their ideas are being received by an adult, and not just listened to or, you know, patronized or just like, you know, like, but really like, let's talk about that. Like, you know,
Don't just say job well done and pacifying, but really give them the meat. I got you.
Absolutely, man. And I think about how I just didn't have that, you know. And so first and foremost, it's like to feel seen. And I say that because like once you feel seen and once you feel affirmed, once you feel like somebody's taking you seriously and what you want to do and how you want to do it, I think that bleeds into a lot of identity, a lot of what you're willing to deal with, right? So many of us, we get into situations where we're not set up to succeed because we're surrounding ourselves with people who aren't set up to help us succeed, because all we know is that kind of personality. We don't know what it is to be around people that can actually help us to succeed. That's such a strange thing that you just allow these cancers in your circle. you know, relationships are the same way, you know. Like if you've never seen a great or never had a great relationship, you can be in a relationship that's absolutely terrible for you, and you just feel like that's normal or that's what you're supposed to be in.
That's the devil, you know. A lot of people stick to the devil they know.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so first and foremost is to support, and so that way that they know what support feels like, they know what genuine care feels like, you know, all of those things. And then secondly, you kind of mentioned it earlier, you know, I've been through so much struggle and tough times to get to this point. You know, the last thing I want is for somebody else to have to go through the same thing to get to this point. I think this is gonna sound right. I mean, it shouldn't be radical, but like, nah, like, you know, I didn't do all of that to come and tell you you got to do all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we get so caught up in what happened to us, you know, that we subconsciously like pass that down, you know, without like the intention of like, well, actually you have me now, so I didn't have a me, you know.
Somebody put it,
you know,
somebody put it that way to me before. It was like, you want to be like, and I'll just speak from this lens, you want to be the father that you didn't have, or you want to be the teacher that you didn't have. You want to be that mother that you didn't have. Because when you
yeah.
fulfill that role, you want to give to those young people around you the things that you felt like, I mean, and we're not perfect in this, but you know, we want to be that conduit for them so they don't have to experience the other side of it that brings them through that dark area that unfortunately so many of us had to realize. Because paving the way, a lot of people don't understand it's about just paving, period. You have to lay down that foundation. You got to lay down that stuff. It gets dirty, it gets dark, it gets nasty, it gets hot, it gets sweaty, it gets tiring. But once the foundation is laid, how do we help them walk across it without having to relay that same foundation?
You know, I tell my interns this all the time. I say, you know how you get ahead? And sometimes they say something like, you know, like run faster or be strategic or this or that, blah, blah. I say, sure, some of that may work sometimes, but the number one way you get ahead is simply to make less mistakes. That's it. You don't have to even run fast. You just got to not trip up when everybody else is tripping up. And I was like, you know how you trip up less? Talk to somebody who's already walked down that street. He'll tell you where the potholes are. He'll tell you where to step and where not to step. So I was telling him, like, you don't have to be, you know, Beethoven or whatever, you know what I'm saying? You don't have to be, you know, all of that stuff. I mean, that stuff will help, but you don't have to be that. All you got to do is that, you know, I was like, yo, the next time you do something and somebody says, and that's okay, all 20-year-olds do that. I want you to say, damn. Because you had access to somebody who's been 20 before. You know what I'm saying? You had access to a map. This was a chance to not make a mistake that most 20-year-olds make. You know? And so in doing that, look at your boy. I'm a map. Holla at me. I can let you know, you know. And you know I'm not steeped in tradition. You know I value what you do. Right? You're an artist, I'm an artist, right? I'm not here to tell you how we did it a million years ago. Now I'm writing the game too. I'm digital marketing on social media and etc. I'm doing all that stuff right now. So you know I know the game. I don't have a rotary phone, my guy. I have the latest iPhone. Like, this is
you hit him with the rotary with the snapback.
Because it's important that they know.
Right.
I'm not familiar with older roads. I know this road. You know what I'm saying? So I'll at me. You know?
So I think we have not talked about your work with focus and community development. We've touched on it, but we haven't really kind of dove into it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a just to be 100% transparent on the start of it. There are some parts of it I can't talk about at this moment, but I'll try to talk about it as much as I can. Unapologetic. I mean, obviously, we're a creative company. Most people know us as a record label for musicians and visual artists. We do all kinds of events. We obviously have our own merchandising. We have the Unapologetic World app, which is available for iOS and Android devices. We have our own TV shows and all that stuff in there. It's crazy. We've partnered with another organization, a nonprofit organization called The Collective here in Memphis. And The Collective is run by a woman named Victoria Jones. She's a good friend of mine. And, you know, we realized a couple years ago. So this room that I'm in right now is essentially what started Unapologetic. This is a spare bedroom in my house that I converted to a studio. I have another bedroom over here that was open and being unused, and we converted that to a whole nother studio. So we had 2 studio rooms in my house. And every day there's just a whole bunch of people here working on music. And that synergy is what created Unapologetic. You know, we started doing shows, we started to put out music, do this, do that. And before we knew it, we started to be able to command the kinds of crowds that make you wonder, who are these people, you know, and how'd they do this? You know, and oftentimes, you know, we would just promote it. Some of the stuff we would just promote through our app. Like we would promote it secretly. We wouldn't put it up on social media, all that stuff. Hundreds of people would still show up. So we recognized that we had this power, and white Memphis recognized that we had this power. And so, you know, they would reach out to us like, yo, Mad Beats, like let's have a talk. And you know, they wanted us to activate spaces downtown. They wanted us to activate spaces in certain parts of the city. And we were always very skeptical of why they wanted us in these specific neighborhoods, right? And what were we doing there? Activation. You know, we would be using their stuff and bringing value to their buildings and their facilities, but we wouldn't own anything, right? A guy named Mono Neon, he's an artist with Unapologetic. He's Prince's last bassist. He's a genius. That's the best word I could use for him. You know, him and we talked about ownership all the time, and how much he got that from Prince. You know, it's all about ownership. You know, and so we were denying these people. So this one guy comes up to me and says, "Yo, James, man, I'll give you half ownership in this warehouse if you help me curate an arts district in this neighborhood." And then he straight up tells me, he says, "Look, man, I'm gonna keep it real with you. You know, I don't mind losing money on the commercial side of this deal because we also own the residential portion of this area. And what you're gonna do here is gonna raise up, you know, value and prices for the residences here. So we'll make that money back on the residential side." And I'm thinking like, bro, are you asking me to jumpstart gentrification for you? And you'll pay me by like giving me a building? Is that what you're telling me? And shout out to your man. If a white man will give me $1 million, I gotta be worth 10. You know what I'm saying? That's
exactly. Come on, P. Come on.
You know, and so I don't know if this building was worth $1 million, but it's a big ass building. So you know, and so I was just like, man. So I went to Victoria about this. Eerily, Victoria's going through the same thing with the Collective. You know, the same thing. These white-led organizations looking to weaponize their association with the Collective to pull people in. And so we were like, man, how can we, if we have this value, if we've created movements that people feel like can weaponize, well, where would we aim the gun, right? Like how can we empower our communities and ourselves, our companies with these things? And we realized like the only thing these people have to offer us is space. So we need to get our own space. That's the foundation of being able to own and weaponize ourselves and what we bring to this community. We then decided, we were then trying to figure out, man, where do we go? Like, where do we want our space to be? Well, I'm from the first neighborhood built formed by Black people in the country. I think that would be a good place to do it. And that's about as far as I can go on this story. But no,
that's far enough, my brother. That's far enough. That's far enough.
That is a good story where it is. I'm excited to see what comes later on with that. And so even with that, I'm going to ask this really dumb question, and hopefully it's not really a dumb question, but I definitely see what you do as an entrepreneur is definitely creative social entrepreneurship. And as a public health girl, that's a creative and an entrepreneur, it goes together, but nobody knows what public health is. So I'm gonna stick with the social entrepreneurship piece. What is the most impactful lesson you've learned, like that you would share with other creative social entrepreneurs?
Buy a big ass building by yourself.
I mean, hey, I think I was in this panel yesterday where I think we were talking about how you really have to put value in telling your why. You know, I think we, especially as artists, we love to kind of hide behind our art. I know I do. But you have to stand next to it. Like, why you do it matters so much. Your story. You have to be able to tell your story. I can say this, like I definitely established myself just being a producer and engineer and nobody really knowing who and what I was, but they just liked the products I created. Absolutely. But when I learned to tell my story, and I learned why, more importantly, why I should tell my story and why I have to bet on the fact that there are other people out there like me who resonate with why I do what I do. And that there's something that if they know I've been through this, it's not just about the product, it's about empowering people through your story and through your successes. Like realizing that changed everything for me. Like I was doing okay as an entrepreneur. But once I started telling my story, and I started really diving into my why, and you know, I was mentioning yesterday too. Like I used to, when I in 2015, right when I first started Unapologetic, like I would go to like Apple, or go to Starbucks, or go to the Billionaire Boys Club in Soho. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Pharrell. I would go into these spots and just look around, because these were spaces that I thought for sure their brand was steeped in their why. You know, I was, you know, I mention this all the time. Like, it's so important for people who have an iPhone. So it's so important that when you buy an iPhone case, that you can still see the Apple. Why? Why is that? Why not just cover up the whole phone? Right? It's because that Apple means something. That they associate themselves with, and they want other people to see that about them. Right? That why is real with Apple. You know, the very first iPod commercials barely told you it was an MP3 player. Like
That joint with
you know,
John Lennon on the cover, like
yeah,
sunglasses. I remember that.
yeah, you know, it was so much about the daringness and the moving forward and the, you know, that what it was actually second or third in the commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Like approaching entrepreneurialism from that perspective, especially if you want to, or you deem yourself a creative and social entrepreneur, you know, people got to know what you stand for, and you can't be afraid to say it. Or if you are afraid to say I'm afraid to say it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Like you, you know, you have to be bold about it, you know, and be real, vulnerable about it, and let people know who you are in a way that it allows it to be possible for them to see themselves in you.
Oh, that's
So much.
that's a hard one. That response right there was a straight hard response.
So much. And all of my entrepreneurship is my nerd flag. And I'm thinking about all the MBA words that go with what you said. But at the end of the day, stand by who you are and why you're doing it. Even if you're not sure how to articulate it, just keep saying it. Just keep saying it.
I find that, like, I've found that sincerity is more potent than eloquence. You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't know how to say it, but people can look at you and feel like this guy is really telling his truth, that's all that matters. I mean, it's not all that matters, but it can hold you down until you can figure out how to better say it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
No, that's for sure. My creative entrepreneurship coach, she is an artist as well. She believes that where you start is, what is your movement? Who are you? What are your values? What is your movement, and how all of those move into before you even start talking about what you're selling, what you're putting out, and what you're doing. Especially in a social venture to this day and age, you could be selling ice cream on the corner in a cart. People want to have a transformational experience from your ice cream and come into your cart. And so, like you said, the ice cream is last. You better tell me about how my life is going to be changed by coming to that corner where you are and talking to you. So I love
that's quantifiably provable. That's quantifiably provable that now more sales are based on experience than ever before.
Oh yeah.
Like like that's a fact for sure.
Definitely. So we are towards the end of our time. I have a really crazy question, and then Elsie, I'm gonna let you wrap it up. In the time that you have come back home, started the business, talked to the people, done the things, created the things, impacted lives, like what changes can you see you've impacted in the lives, the minds, and maybe even the systems that you are connected to?
I'll just start with probably the easiest one, which is just that, you know, earning your first big check is great. Writing your first big check is greater. So
don't worry, if I write rhymes, I write checks. Woo!
That's real.
Go ahead, Puffy.
That's real. Yeah. You know, just knowing that there's something I'm doing that's attracting the kinds of organizations or people who can pay us, you know, at a level to where when I write my team their checks, they're game-changing checks. You know, like that. That's, I mean, I'm gonna be real. Like there's a lot of ways I can talk about changing and helping, but if just to be ultra transparent with it, you know, so much change and help, I feel, is not sustainable if your change and help does not also directly change someone's economic standpoint. So you can tell somebody about wellness all day, but until you can set them up to work only 40 hours and pay their rent, be able to get something to eat and be comfortable, because my dad had to work 70 hours a week to do that for him and his 2 kids, and we still lived in a slum. So you can't tell me about, like, you know, treat yourself and take a day off. And tell my dad that in the 90s, he would have slapped you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so we can talk about all of those other things, right? But I feel like it's an insult to talk about those things without first changing where you are economically.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Best way to help somebody not be broke is to not be broke yourself.
Yeah, I can't tell you to imagine and dream and do all this other stuff or whatever. If I know as soon as we get done with this conversation, you got to figure out what you're gonna eat tonight, like, and you don't know how. You know what I'm saying? Like, nah. The first thing I need to do is make sure you can do that, and then now after we do that, okay, now we can go to this other stuff, right? You know, and I feel like outside of the economics of that, just to be daringly disruptive. That's something that I feel like I have accidentally created a legacy of. Hold on one second. Let me show you guys something. So this is a few years ago, I put up on my Facebook page. This is gonna sound like a joke, but like, hear me out. So I put up on my Facebook page a petition that I made up on this petition website, and it was just me just trying to be funny, if I'm being real. You know what I'm saying? But it was me trying to be funny about an issue that is very real, though, right?
Okay.
And so I put up there, I said, hey, we should, like, why is our main street called Main Street when Memphis is like the home of the word Maine? Like, and I'm talking about Maine. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Like, so I'm thinking, like, man, if we in Memphis, our Main Street should be Main Street. Like, it should be MANE Street.
Yep.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And I was just up there just making a joke, but the seriousness underneath it was that this is a very Black city, right? And we don't celebrate that enough. Every time we talk about Memphis, it's Memphis. And you go to the Memphis gift shop, and the first thing you see is a whole bunch of white people, even though Memphis is historically put on the map because of what Black people do.
Right.
I put up there, hey, man, we should change that to Main Street, man. I put up a petition, and I went to sleep. The next morning, I got up to go to a meeting, and my phone was blowing up. That petition had went viral. It had been shared a few 100,000 times. Juicy J, Craig Brewer, who directed Hustle and Flow, Terrence Howard, a whole bunch of these people signed this petition. It was national, right? I was on the cover of every newspaper here in Memphis within 48 hours.
What?
And I remember telling my wife, I was just like, all right, I'm never gonna underestimate the power of my voice again. You know, it was on my Facebook page. That's my least followed social media account. Like,
wow.
If I had put this up on my Instagram page, I would have been like, all right, I get it. You know what I'm saying? But on my Facebook, my personal Facebook page, I was so surprised that it happened, and that it happened at that level. I was on the news. It was all kind of stuff happening. It was crazy. And, you know, I think people have seen me and my good friend Victoria. They've seen us succeed while not playing it safe. I think that's key. I think they see, like, disruptors as people who disrupt, but they lose opportunities. And then they see people who stay quiet and don't disrupt and get opportunities. And so you have, like, the leader of the protest is usually some poor guy, and then the guy who's successful in business is usually some guy who knows how to play with the snakes, right? But then you have people like me, people like Victoria, who are a success in our organizations, especially once we announced what's about to happen. And we did it disrupting. We did it making people uncomfortable because the things that needed to change were not changing. And so we weren't afraid to question and really disrupt the status quo. I love the fact that people feel empowered to do that now. That they don't feel the need to, like I said in my TED Talk, they don't feel the need to use their white voice. You know, they can be themselves and know that you can gain and grow on the business side. You're not sacrificing business growth by disrupting the systems that need to be disrupted.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, so I'm going to definitely help us with the transition is getting to that time. So yeah. I got a couple questions for you. I love the shameless plugs, shout out to Dope Soul Apparel, shout out to Royal Star for what we're wearing, shout out to Unapologetic. So what is next with Unapologetic as far as what ventures and stuff y'all have outside of what won't we name right now?
Yeah, I'd say so in 2019, we did, at the end of 19, the very end of 19, top of 20, actually, we partnered with Red Bull. So we were about to go on tour with them and do some crazy stuff. That ended up getting killed off because of the pandemic, but we've adapted. And so now we're about to do some virtual touring in ways I don't think I've ever seen done before. But we have a lot of projects dropping this year, a lot of albums. Cameron Bethany, Weirdo from Memphis, and we have a lot of releases coming this year. We have our music's gonna be showing up in some cool new places. I'll just say that. Some more movies, some more interesting commercials. And then the launch of something that will be a game changer for us for sure.
Thank you. Well, I am a fan. Bottom line, the key phrase here is authenticity, and I think the only way to be unapologetic is to be authentically yourself, authentically, genuinely, and audaciously us. And I want to thank you for your time, your effort, your energy, and I want to say, for all the things that are coming, we're going to be on the lookout. We're going to be heavy supporters of it, but we appreciate your art, the artists that you're working with, and the action that you're putting forth, my brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate y'all, man. For real.